Hey YouTubers, we're going to be reviewing the new Voltgo 200 amp hour LiPo 4 battery. This is a 12 volt system. They also make it a 12 volt, a 24 volt, and a 48 volt system. If you're wondering, well, what makes this battery any different than any of the other batteries that, you've seen people review on YouTube, and well, that's simple. This battery here has a really rugged case that has a mounting system that they have come up with that is just excellent for, guys mounting these in their vehicles and their boats and their campers and all this. One reason why I wanted to do this video is because eventually we would like to be able to do some camping and be able to go out for a weekend and not have to worry about having power. And so by putting a couple of these batteries in the bed of your vehicle, then you can easily have enough power for a weekend if you have some solar panels. And so I just wanted to show you how that these batteries mount and how that we would use them in our system. And I actually have another one of these batteries. I'm going to show you how to link them together, and we're going to just go from there, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the battery as we go along. And if you look here on the front of the battery, you can see embedded into the ABS plastic, you've got these stainless steel inserts. And so what these are used for is, I'm going to go ahead and turn the battery. You can see you've got a mounting handle right here. It's a carrying handle right now, but you can undo it from there and flip it over and put it down here and use it as a way to bolt the battery down. Well, if you don't want it here, then you can take it and put it down here and use it to bolt the battery down. Or if you want to bolt it to the side of a wall or something, you can mount it here and bolt it this way. Here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you just unscrew it. And keep in mind, this is actual metal right there. That's not plastic. Now, the housing itself is ABS plastic, and it is super strong. It's got a lot of curves in it, and so by adding a bunch of curves in the battery, it made it just even stronger. And so these guys definitely knew how to build a case for a battery. This thing is the nicest case I've seen on a battery yet. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these bolts out right here at the top where that handle is. And they're stainless steel hardware, so they have really made this thing correct. So that way, if you leave it outside, it's not going to rust on you, the hardware. And then as far as these little carrying handles slash brackets, they're made out of some sort of metal. I believe it's aluminum. I'm not real sure, to be honest with you. It has some sort of coating on it. I've not tested it with a magnet, but they're really heavy duty. And so you can see right there, once I unscrewed it, then you've got those nutserts. And so what you can do with this is take it and you can use it like it was as a handle, or you can mount it this way and screw your screws or whatever bolts and put them in through whatever you're mounting it up to, or you can mount it down here and mount it to the floor of whatever you're mounting it to. Or if you want to mount it here on the front, you can mount it just like that. So this thing is just very intelligent how they've made it. And you can see right in there in the metal there, they even put some little gussets there in the middle to make it stronger. So man, these guys have designed a really awesome mounting battery. Now, is this the cheapest battery? No. Is it the most powerful battery? No. So is this battery rugged looking? Yes. Is this battery strong? Yes. It has a lot of good features that make this battery awesome for, someone who's going to be camping or overlanding or putting this in an RV or a boat. The mounting system on this is just awesome. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today in today's video. So right here below where you got the handle is this little plate right here. Now what that plate is used for, and I've already got the bolts loose so I can pull it off real easy, but once I go ahead and pull this off, what this little plate is used for is to connect two batteries side by side or front to back, just whichever way you want to mount them. Let's say you want to put another battery in front of this battery. Well, what you can do is take and mount this plate on there, and then there's another plate on the other end of the battery, and then you mount this one, and so you mount the two together side by side. Now if you want to mount them lengthwise, you can do that. You just take and pull the plate this way, mount the other battery coming this way, and it mounts them all in one length. So with all these little nutserts being empty, because you're not using them all at one time, I got to thinking, I was like, man, wouldn't it be really cool if you could take these nutserts and use them to screw in other stuff? maybe like a charge controller or maybe a power inverter. Maybe you can mount like a bracket on the front of here that holds your power inverter up next to your Voltgo battery. So my mind got to turning. So the other night we were in there in the office and we were talking about it, and I was like, you know, I bet you this charge controller will fit on the end of this battery. And so we got to talking about it and got to playing around with it, and literally within just a few minutes figured out a way to mount it up to it. I want you guys to be the first ones to see it. All right, so I told you guys that I had 2 of these batteries and I'm gonna connect them together, and I also told you that I've got a charge controller hooked up. So I just got this thing wired up last night, and I'm super excited about this. And I want rights to being able to have figured out how to mount this charge controller to this battery. I think it was pretty smooth. So anyways, if you look here on the front of the battery, you got the black, and there's like an orange color right in there, and then the white lettering. And so I wanted a charge controller that, number one, it matched, and number two, that, you know, it didn't need to be a huge charge controller. You know, if you're mounting this on a vehicle or something like that, you probably don't want no more than a 30 amp charge controller, because you're not going to have a whole lot of solar power on this thing, maybe 200 to 600 watts or so. So anyways, you know, I didn't need a big charge controller, so I got to looking online, and I found this one here from Alto Solar, and I put it up here to the side where the extra nutserts were from the brackets, and I'll show you right here on this battery. You can see that there's a bunch of nutserts right in there. So I thought, well, since I've got all these nutserts there, I can connect whatever the heck I want to in any of these, because I'm not gonna put anything down here except maybe the handle when I go to lift it up. But if I'm mounting it in a vehicle, all these are open, you know. And so I put that charge controller there, and it didn't just mount up. No, the mounting location was a little bit off, so I knew that I had a little bit of room on each side. So what I did was I took a chainsaw file. It's called a rat tail file, and I filed out just a little bit there on the mounting surface on the charge controller on each side where the bolt is. And I'm talking just a little bit. I literally filed for maybe 5 minutes, and this thing fit right up. And I used some smaller mounting hardware with a smaller head, and this thing mounted right up. So I was tickled to death. And so you can see this thing ain't going nowhere. I mean, it is really mounted. So what this did for me was allow me to have a battery and a charge controller, and then I've hooked my wiring in here. But all I need now is just a solar panel to be able to pull that power in from the sun, and you use this charge controller to charge the battery up. And the reason you need that charge controller and you don't just wire straight to the battery is because if you just hook a solar panel right up to the battery, it's going to overcharge the battery and harm it. It can hurt that battery. So you use that charge controller, and it charges it up to the desired voltage, and then it just shuts off, you know, and it turns back on when it drops below that voltage, and then it turns back on and off, and it keeps it charged all the time. So that's why you want a charge control. So when I went to wire this thing up, you notice there's not a whole lot of room right there between the bottom of the controller to the bottom of the battery. So I got to thinking, man, I hope I can be able to get those wires, those solar panel wires, to turn out and not be too far down and get all bent up and stuff. So I tried it with just regular solar panel wire, and everybody knows this stuff's really stiff, and it's kind of, you know, too stiff to make a real sharp bend. So I thought, well, why couldn't I just take some of that New Concepts wire, the 8 gauge, and it's oxygen-free copper, but it's very flexible. I mean, look at that. This stuff here is rated for 60 amps, and it's an 8 gauge wire, and you see how flexible it is. And so anyways, I thought instead of using just your typical solar wire, that I would just use that New Concepts wire. And so I was able to come down right out of it and make that bend, no problem. You see how flexible that wire is. Then for the battery side, I use the same New Concepts 8 gauge wire, and again, this stuff's rated at 60 amps, and it worked out beautiful. I mean, you can see that I come up the back side, and I just took a wiring clamp right here, a little plastic one, and hooked it right in to where I screwed in the charge controller, and that keeps those wires all nice and tight. And then I come up here and I ran the negative wire across the back and looped it around to the front. I used the New Concepts wire, 8 gauge, and then for the terminals, I used the Cell Term brand terminals off Amazon. I really love those. I think they work great. I'll put a link for them down below along with the New Concepts wire, and then I put some heat shrink on there. And in the front here, I just put a little wire clamp right here in the front holding the MC4 connectors. So it just worked out perfect. So if you're out there and you want the same system and you want to do the same thing that I did, I'll put a link for the Alto Solar charge controller. So if you're wondering, how do you connect these two batteries together? So I told you before, you can take this plate right here, you mount it here in the front like that, and then you just slide this right up next to it, and then line your bolts up there on the inside. You might have to shift them around till it gets lined up, but it took just a second, and then you just screw them together. It's that simple. And man, once you get these things screwed together like that, I mean, it's super strong. And you can look at the front one here, but there's one that's just like it there in the back, same bracket and everything. Now you can't tell me that don't look sharp. So now you've got them joined in the middle, you've got them a mounting surface on both batteries, mounting it down, and then on the back side you can do the same exact thing. And so you can mount a plate here in the middle to keep them joined together. And then you've got, you know, mounting here in the middle, and then a mount here in the middle. I mean, it's just endless possibilities with these Voltgo batteries. I love the case of them. I just think they're an amazing battery. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how to hook the batteries and charge controller up to this solar panel here. And so this is a 180 watt solar panel that I got on Amazon, and you can see it's very easy to hook up. It's got your MC4 connectors and they're labeled. There's negative, that side's positive, and then all I have here is just a little extension cable for, it's just a couple solar wires to connect to your MC4s here that connects to the solar panel. So we're going to hook it up real quick, and we're going to go ahead and start with the positive. This is off the solar panel here. You just push them together, they lock in place. And I just made these on a whim. I mean, literally, it just took me 5 minutes to make these cables. If you've never used these MC4 connectors before, literally, you can put the connector on the end of the wire in literally like a couple minutes. Very easy. But anyways, first things first, we're going to go ahead and plug this in. And you can see red to red, positive, positive. We're going to go ahead and connect the negative. It's the same thing, and these only plug in one way. They're dummy proof. You can't hook them in the wrong connector. They only go one way. And so now I've got both of them hooked up to this 100, or I've got one battery hooked up to this 180 watt solar panel. Now I'm going to come on the other side here and show you that the charge controller turned on, and you can see right there that it's set to 12 volt lithium. Now this charge controller can do an absorbed glass matte battery, a lithium, 12 volt and 24 volt. So once you hook up your solar panel to the MC4 connectors here going to the charge controller, then that's really all that you need to hook up. Now, to be able to monitor this thing, you can monitor a couple different ways. You have a display right here that tells you your battery power, and it tells you 25%, 50%, 75, and 100. And then there's an alarm, and then there's a run light just letting you know that it's okay. Now if you overpower something and it shuts the battery down, then the alarm light will sound. But you can usually see it lit up a little bit better, but it looks like it might be picking up on the camera though. But anyways, that's one way. And then the other way that you can monitor the power coming in from the solar panel is through their app. And right now my phone's acting kind of stupid, but you go to the Voltgo Power app. And like I said, my phone's acting up right now. I can't get it to connect. I had it connected the other day and I've been playing with it ever since. And then voila, today my phone's acting up and I just can't get it to connect. But it usually shows you your standby power and all your voltages and all that. And it's an awesome app. I mean, it really is when my phone's working right. Anyways, it's just pretty neat to be able to monitor it with an app. But that's really all that you need to make power. Now, depending on what type of power you're gonna use, whether it be DC power or AC power, depends on the next step. So the way that you would use the battery to power DC devices is very, very simple. And if you're wondering, well, what kind of things could you run off of this? Well, you can run, a phone charger. You can run USB light and run a fan. You can run quite a bit of stuff. And you don't just have to have one of these. Obviously, if you want to run multiple of these, you can. I mean, you can stack them up. Do most people do that? No. But is this the most efficient way to do it? Yes. And the reason being is because number one, you don't have to have no power inverter turned on, so that power inverter's draining power from your system, plus it's using more wattage than just straight DC, because it's having to convert it from DC to AC. So by using this cigarette lighter plug, you're just hooking right to the battery and you're getting straight DC power. If you want to hook up to a power inverter, that's fine. They do make a power inverter that has a passive DC connection through it. And what I mean by that is the power inverter, whether it's turned on or off, it allows DC power to go through it, and it allows you to be able to power up your phones. It gives you a bunch of outputs where you can plug a lot of stuff into it. And I'll show you, I've got one right here. So like I was saying, you can take an inverter. This certain one has a DC pass through, and you can connect it to this battery here, and I'll show you what all it's capable of doing. Let me first connect it. What you want to do is keep your battery turned on. It has an on and off switch right there. You make sure that's powered on, then touch it with the resistor for about 5 to 10 seconds, and when you do, you can see the light on the inverter turn on. And the reason you do this is so you don't end up with a spark, and so you don't mess with the internal capacitors of the inverter. And then you just take and touch it to the battery post and go ahead and connect it. If you're interested in these little resistors, they're like 10 bucks. I'll put them in the link in my description down below, and you get like 5 of them for $10. They're just a 30 ohm resistor. But anyways, once you get this hooked up here, you can see that it tells you right there, there is your battery voltage. It's at 13.5. You know, I'm sure it's gonna look funky and flashing on the camera, but like I said, you've got all these connections here on top. You've got two USB A, and then a quick charge USB, and then there's a USB-C. Well, what can you do with that? Well, I have these lights right here on top. These are USB lights. You can connect those in, and you can see right there that uses 5 watts of power, and that's DC. Then I've got another one. You can plug it in. There's another 5 watts of power. Then you can plug in another light, and total you're using 15 watts of power. That's nothing. That's very, very efficient. And so if you want to, let's say, run a small little fan, then you have this little port here on the side, and you can plug in a little 12-volt fan. So I've got this little 12-volt fan plugged in, and you can run it. This thing here is rated at 10 watts. It only uses between 5 to 7, but it's rated at 10 watts. And so, you know, you've got a fan, you've got 3 USB lights, and that's just on DC. So at the most, you're using 25 watts. So that's very, very efficient. This thing will run a 25 watts a long time, many hours. Now, if you turn all the DC stuff off and switch to AC, you know, let's say you plug in, let's say a box fan or something like that, then, you know, a box fan is going to use like 75-80 watts on high. And then plus, not only is it going to use 75-80 watts on high, but the inverter is going to be using wattage as well. So I would say this inverter probably uses roughly under 10 watts, but you know, you go from 75-80 watts to another 10 watts to that, you know, those wattage starts creeping up, and the amount of time that you can run your devices starts lowering. So you know, try to keep everything running on DC power, and it'll last a lot longer. Now I understand some things you can't get to run on DC power. You need the power inverter, and so that's why I recommend this little small one here. This one here is from a company called MaxPart. It's on the Amazon store called Twing. I've got a link in the description down below. I've tested this thing. It's pure sine wave. It runs great, and it's just a very simple inverter. It's really small, and it has all these outputs right there on top. It has a lot to offer, plus it comes with these alligator clamps. Now, would I recommend using this thing to 1,000 watts or, you know, even 700 or 800 watts with these alligator clamps? No, I would definitely upgrade the cables with that inverter because I've tested it, and when they get hot, this right here gets way on up there in temperature. So I would recommend going with something a lot thicker, just a heavier gauge wire like this here. You know, this is just some ones that I had left over from another power inverter that I reviewed. But truthfully, if I was going to upgrade the wiring in it, I would probably go to this New Concepts wire over here. I recommend it to, you know, everybody. I use it on all my builds. This stuff is the best wiring you can get. It's not going to get hot on you as long as you size it adequately. But anyways, that's enough on the inverter and what you can run on there. I think you guys get the picture. But back to the batteries, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about them. And these batteries here are really neat, and I don't have them hooked together, but you can hook them together in parallel. Now you cannot hook them together in series. And now what I mean by that is when you hook them together in parallel, it increases the amount of capacity that you have. So you go from 200 amp hours and you hook this one together to it, and that'll make it 400 amp hours. So it's still at 12 volts. You're not messing with the voltage, changing that around, but you're just increasing the capacity. And that's the way that you can add more batteries to this system. So these batteries here are I-65 rated, and what that means is you can leave these in the back of your vehicle and it can rain on them, but you know, you don't want to drive this thing in a lake and submerge them, because you know they will leak, you know, if you try to submerge them. But you know, I would say you would probably be good for just a few minutes or something like that, but I wouldn't chance it, just because, you know, that's a pretty big investment to risk. But you know, if they do get rained on, or if water sprays on them or something like that, you'll be fine. Now, as far as the charge controller and the power inverter, probably not so much, but the batteries, you'll be fine. Now, if they do stay out in the weather, the hardware that connects the batteries is stainless steel, so it's not going to rust on you, so that is a plus. And let's say, you know, you have a problem, you know, with the BMS or something that goes out on the inside of the unit, you can take the top off of this. And that's what's really neat about this battery, is you can see right there, it's got a perimeter of bolts that goes all the way around, and there's a gasket in there that seals the top on this battery, and so you could pull the top off this very easily. And so that is really neat. Now, like I said, it does have an on and off switch there in the middle, so that right there is basically a battery disconnect in itself. So I find that switch to be very, very handy. And you know, if something went wrong or you needed to hook something up, you can just turn the battery off. So one thing about lithium batteries that, you know, you don't hear a lot of people talking about it, you know, when they do battery reviews and stuff, just simply because it's, you know, I don't know, I just don't think that it's covered as much as it should be. So let's just say you have these batteries in the back of your vehicle, and you've got solar panels up on the roof of your vehicle, and let's say it gets cold at night. Let's say it dropped down below freezing. Well, if these batteries are needing to be charged and it drops below freezing, and your solar panel starts charging a battery, on a normal battery, if it doesn't have a heating pad on the inside of it to keep it above that freezing temperature, and you try to charge a battery that's freezing like that, you can damage the battery. So these batteries here have like a heating pad built in, so it warms the battery up when it starts to charge. So, you know, it senses that, you know, once it drops below that freezing temperatures and you try to charge it, then it starts heating the battery up, so it doesn't damage the battery long term. So it kind of protects your investment. So, you know, like on a lead acid battery, it doesn't matter so much if it's below freezing. It's not going to really bother it that much. But on lithium, it really does affect it. And so you definitely want a battery that does have that heating element on the inside to keep it above that freezing temperature. It's just pretty much a fail-safe, so you don't ruin your batteries. So that is one major thing that I do like about this battery. And then also for the nerds out there that, and this goes way over my head, I don't know much about this, so I'm not going to speak on much of it and try to act like I know what it is and what all it does. But you've got right here, you've got these little screw-in caps, and you can see that they're just plastic caps, and they've got like I believe a silicone internal there that mates up to the flat part of that area. And what this is it's a COM port. You can see right there, it's a communication port 1, and then over here you got another one, communication port 2. and I guess you can plug in there if you know what the heck you're doing and make changes to the settings. Not real sure. I'm not too big into being that much of a nerd to know what that is, but you know, if you are and you like playing with those settings and you're a lot smarter than I am, then that's a pretty cool feature to have. You know, if that's something that you get into. Is that feature for me? No, probably never going to use that, most likely, unless they come up with something that plugs into it that makes it cool. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. I just wanted to tell you guys about the Voltgo batteries and show you some of the products here and tell you about what all it can do and show you some of the features. But you know, as far as the battery goes, I gotta say I'm very impressed. These guys knocked this one out of the park, and it's just an awesome battery. And you'll see me doing it, using this battery and some of the testing and stuff from here on out, and I'll make sure that I use it and test it, and if I have any problems out of it, I'll definitely let you guys know. Just look down in the description or down in the comments, and you know, if I have any problems, I'll let you know, and I'll probably even make a video on it. But so far so good. I've not had any problems. I was using this in one of the last power inverter tests, and didn't have any problems. We ran it up to almost like 1800 watts, because the discharge current on this max discharge current's 150 amps. So we ran it all the way up to 150 amps, and we watched the battery do what it was supposed to do, and it shut down, and to keep from harming the internal components. So when it did shut down though, the alarm light went on and let us know that it shut down, and you can see right there's an alarm LED light that lights up. But it didn't harm the battery at all. It did, like I said, it did exactly what it was supposed to do, and so we was both very impressed with this battery. So anyways, like I said, I'm gonna wrap this up. I appreciate you guys watching. I could talk all day about this battery. I gotta wind myself down so I don't preach any longer. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and until next time, see you.